If you've ever dropped a sample into Studio One and had no clue what tempo it was in, or worse, trusted a mislabeled file, this video is for you. Today I'm going to show you 3 easy ways to lock in the correct tempo every time, no matter what kind of sample you're dealing with. So here's a short answer. If your sample comes with a tempo already embedded or labeled in the file name, we're going to verify and then lock that in. If there's no info at all, don't worry. Studio One has built-in features and tools to help us detect the tempo, and I'll even show you a manual trick that I used for years before these features even existed. Either way, you'll leave this video knowing exactly how to find the tempo of any sample you drag in. To make things faster, I've created a free productivity macro toolbar that includes a one-click tempo detection shortcut, which we'll use later on in this video. I'll tell you more about it later, but you can grab it now by clicking the first link in the description. Okay, so here I have a sample that I've brought into Studio One, and before anything else, I would highly urge you to open up the inspector window and then change your tempo setting for this track to time stretch and the time stretch algorithm to Sound Elastic Pro format. I'll explain why this matters a little bit later. But okay, let's start off with the best possible scenario, and that is when your sample comes with a pre-embedded or labeled tempo. Now for this sample, we can see here that in fact it has a label that says 170. However, we always verify. So to do that, simply right-click on the file and then check the number under the file tempo box. If they match, which in this case they do, then all you have to do now is set that as your song's tempo and you're done. Now here I want you to pay attention to something. Even though the click track is on beat, it feels relatively fast compared to the sample. If I turn off the click track, I would expect it to go something like this. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. The reason this happens is that oftentimes sample or loop makers will bounce their loops at a doubled tempo to make it easier to program certain elements faster, like hi-hat rolls, for example, which are popular in genres like trap or pop. Now, aside from it feeling a little weird, a good rule of thumb is that if the sample is set or labeled to 140 or above, it was probably bounced at a doubled tempo. To fix this, all you simply have to do is open up your inspector window, and then towards the bottom here, we're going to locate the file tempo parameter, drop down this arrow, and select half tempo. This will have Studio One cut that file tempo in half, and from here, all you simply have to do is set this new file tempo to your song, and again, we are done. Much better. Now, remember how I said in the beginning to set your track's tempo to time stretch and to use the Elastic Pro Solo algorithm? Well, this is where it comes in, because now with the correct tempo set, if you change your song's tempo later, for example, let's make this faster, the sample will automatically follow along without sounding weird. Super helpful. Okay, moving on to scenario number 2. Let's say you drop in a sample and there is no information provided. No label, no embedded BPM. What do we do? There are 2 methods here, and the first one is the easiest, and that is simply to use the native detect tempo feature that we got with Studio One 7. I'm going to be using the same sample for this demo, but for this, simply right-click on the audio event, head over to audio, and then select the detect tempo feature under the audio bend section. If you want an even faster way of doing this, then you can download my free productivity macro toolbar and select that same option under the sample drop-down menu. This toolbar is honestly one of my favorite Studio One resources because, much like the detect sample command shortcut, it puts some of the best production features that Studio One has to offer right up front, so you don't have to do a ton of menu diving. I've also packed it with a ton of my own custom macros that speed up my workflow a ton, like adding plugins with a single button click or renaming entire song sections. This toolbar is completely free, and it's linked for you down below in the description. But okay, once you use the detect tempo feature, look at the file tempo box in the inspector. If it gives you a number, you're good. Just set that into your song's tempo and move on. However, if it says map, that means that the sample has multiple internal tempos, which usually happen with live performances or complex loops. In that case, I would open up the tempo track by selecting it from the hamburger icon here at the top, and then dragging that entire file up to it. Once you do this, you can see how Studio One has now created some tempo automation that will change the tempo of your song to match the sample. Now, if this is all you needed, then you're good to go. However, in most cases, and especially in hip-hop sampling, we probably just want one set tempo so that we can chop this up and make our own patterns. In that case, I would just take the average of what we see here and set that as the file tempo and the song tempo. So for example, here in the first section, we have 84.5, then we have 86.9, back to 84.5, and then 82 at the end. For this, I would probably just go with an 85. So what I'm gonna do is first get rid of all this automation by dragging from the bottom of the tempo track, selecting everything and then hitting the backspace. Then go over to your file tempo here in the inspector window. We're gonna double click on map and then type in 85. And then finally set that for your song tempo here at the bottom. Perfect. Now, in all honesty, these first two methods should be more than enough to get you going. However, just so you can get the full picture, let me show you a third way. This is how I used to do it before all the fancy tools, and honestly, it still works. For this method, let's go ahead and first take our loop bar, which is oftentimes hidden here in the first measure, and then set either a 4 or 8 bar loop. Most internet samples are one of these two lengths, but from here, all you have to do is adjust your song's tempo until the end of the audio matches the end of the loop. Now for this, I am going to be using my Atom because it allows me to change the tempo with one of the encoders, but check this out. So I'm going to drag this back, as I mentioned, until the end of my audio matches the end of the loop. So right there. And as you can see, we're right back at 85 BPM. To drive this home, let me show you with a different sample. So let's bring in another one here. Now this one's shorter, so it's probably going to be 4 measures. Let's drag that back here. And then now again, we just have to adjust our song's tempo until the end of the audio file matches the end of the loop. So probably about right there, which should be 70 BPM. It's not high tech, but it works every time. Now finally, for this method, do not forget to also set the tempo for the actual file itself so that if you do change the tempo in the future, the sample will follow. And as a reminder, you do that by simply going over to the inspector window and then under the file tempo box, double click and then type it in. So to recap, if your sample has a labeled tempo, verify it and then set it for your song. If there is no info, use the detect tempo feature or go manual with the loop bar trick. Always set your track to time stretch with the Elastic Pro Solo algorithm, and always set the file tempo once you lock it in. Now, as a bonus, it's totally okay to also leave it at the original double tempo or double it yourself if you do need to program faster elements like hi-hats. With these 3 methods, you will never get stuck guessing a sample's tempo again. Now, if all you needed was the right tempo to drop in a loop and move on, then you're set. But if you are planning to actually flip that sample, then the tempo is just the beginning. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to chop your sample in a way that sounds cohesive, not random, and how to turn those chops into patterns that feel intentional, musical, and fully your own. That video is coming soon, so if you're serious about sampling, hit subscribe, and I'll see you soon.